How to Set Boundaries. Learn to Say No and Stop People Pleasing is an audiobook by author and therapist Dr. Julie Smith, which offers practical guidance on how to set boundaries, prioritize personal needs, and cultivate healthier relationships. This audiobook is designed for people who struggle with saying no, feel overburdened by others' expectations, or find themselves constantly people-pleasing to maintain relationships, or avoid conflict. Key themes and takeaways. Understanding boundaries. Dr. Smith explains that boundaries are essential limits we set with others to protect our time, energy, and emotional well-being. She discusses the difference between healthy boundaries, which promote self-respect and mutual respect, and weak or non-existent boundaries, which can lead to exhaustion, resentment, and even burnout. Boundaries are about understanding what you need and making those needs known to others, in a compassionate yet firm way. Types of boundaries. The book dives into different types of boundaries: physical, emotional, mental, and material. Dr. Smith encourages listeners to assess which areas of their lives require stronger boundaries. For example, emotional boundaries help people protect their feelings from being overly influenced by others, while physical boundaries help maintain personal space. Recognizing these distinctions helps individuals identify and communicate their specific limits. Why we struggle to set boundaries. Dr. Smith identifies common reasons people avoid setting boundaries, such as fear of confrontation, anxiety about being perceived as selfish, and the desire to please others. She emphasizes that boundary setting is especially challenging for people with low self-esteem or a history of codependency. This section provides insights into the root causes of people-pleasing behavior and reassures listeners that their need for boundaries is valid and healthy. The importance of saying no. Learning to say no is a central skill for effective boundary setting. Dr. Smith walks listeners through why saying no is not only okay, but necessary for personal growth. She teaches techniques for saying no in a respectful and clear manner, suggesting phrases like, "I don't have capacity for this right now," or "I need some time for myself." She offers practical exercises to help listeners practice saying no without guilt or excessive explanation. Techniques for setting boundaries. Practical advice and strategies form the core of the audiobook, equipping listeners with step-by-step techniques for establishing boundaries. Dr. Smith suggests using I statements, e.g., "I feel overwhelmed when," to express needs without sounding accusatory. She encourages listeners to be specific about their needs, set consequences for crossed boundaries, and stay consistent with enforcement. Techniques also include role-playing scenarios and visualization exercises to build confidence. Overcoming guilt and anxiety. Dr. Smith addresses the guilt and anxiety that often arise when setting boundaries. She normalizes these feelings and offers coping strategies, reminding listeners that setting boundaries doesn't mean they are selfish or uncaring. By learning to sit with discomfort and understanding that self-care is a necessity, not a luxury, listeners can reduce their tendency to feel guilty for prioritizing themselves. Maintaining healthy relationships. One of the book's goals is to help listeners cultivate healthier relationships by fostering respect for both parties' boundaries. Dr. Smith explains how setting boundaries can actually improve relationships, as they reduce feelings of resentment and enable open, honest communication. She also emphasizes that in a healthy relationship, both parties should feel comfortable setting boundaries without fear of reprisal or manipulation. Dealing with pushback and resistance. Setting boundaries often invites pushback from people who are used to unrestricted access to one's time and energy. Dr. Smith provides strategies for dealing with individuals who might resist or attempt to bypass newly set boundaries. She teaches listeners how to stay firm, reassert boundaries calmly, and recognize when a relationship may need re-evaluation if boundary violations are recurrent. Self-care and personal growth. Dr. Smith reinforces the importance of self-care, as the foundation of boundary setting. She explains how boundary setting is a form of self-respect that promotes mental and emotional well-being. The audiobook guides listeners in developing a self-care routine that prioritizes their needs, fosters resilience, and encourages growth. Real-life scenarios and exercises. To reinforce key concepts, Dr. Smith includes real-life scenarios, interactive exercises, and reflections, allowing listeners to apply the techniques in everyday situations. She encourages them to journal about their experiences, monitor their emotional responses, and assess how setting boundaries affects their relationships and well-being over time. Conclusion. How to set boundaries. Learn to say no and stop people-pleasing is a comprehensive guide to understanding, establishing, and maintaining boundaries with confidence. Dr. Smith's empathetic and practical approach makes this audiobook a valuable resource for anyone looking to improve their relationships, reduce stress, and embrace a life where their needs are acknowledged and respected. It empowers listeners to take control of their lives by mastering the art of setting boundaries, ultimately leading to greater self-respect, autonomy, and emotional health.